My name is Gene Stewart, and I had 3 years experience in the Navy, and I had quite a bit of experience in getting ready for the Navy, in that my father saw an examination which the Navy Department was putting on looking for officers, and he suggested I take it. And I thought, well, yeah, that's a good idea. So I took the exam, and lo and behold, I passed. And I was one of several who made it into the physical part of it. And we went ahead, and all of a sudden, I was in the Navy. And I had applied for destroyers in the Atlantic, but I ended up with orders to a aircraft carrier in the Pacific, and spent getting on a train from where I was in Tampa, Florida, and traveling by train and then by ship and then by airplane to my ship, which was operating off of Korea at the time. And we made the landing on the ship, and my career in the Navy began. We were at war at the time with in the Korean War, and but it lasted only about 2 months after I got on board, and then we resumed travels around the Far East. And when I had finished with my time in service, I had 3 cruises to the Orient, and they lasted about 9 months apiece, and then we'd come back to San Diego or San Francisco and spend 3 months in between, and then get going again. And it was a very interesting and enjoyable stay in the service. I was a gunnery officer and had certain responsibilities within the gunnery department, and also qualified for Officer of the Deck, which is meaning for you're in charge of the ship when the captain is not on the bridge. And it's very interesting. We had a number of incidences which I had partaken, but it was all in all a very interesting and enjoyable stay in the service, and I think I learned an awful lot from it. And I finally ended up getting out, although I had the choice of staying in, but I decided that I didn't want to spend 3 months, or rather 9 months out of every year over in the far Pacific or something similar. So that was the end of it for me. There's one story that I remember vividly, and that is a case where we were steaming along the ocean with a big task force. There was 4 aircraft carriers, large aircraft carriers, and we had a screen of 10 destroyers around us. And the admiral had the bright idea that we should change places with the ship behind us, which was also a large aircraft carrier. And so he sent the signals out to do it. And I had the problem of how to do it, because we were in a position of lead, and we had to slow down the ship or turn it around. And I recommended to the captain that we turn it around. Well, that was a wrong recommendation. And I went ahead and he agreed it was a good idea, but it was a wrong idea. And we started to turn, and everybody else was going at about 20 knots, and we ended up going about 20 knots in the wrong direction. And we ran out through the screen, and then we started back. And it took us about a half an hour to 45 minutes to get back in that position. And I was a bit embarrassed. The navigator was very mad, and then it was the end of my watch, so I left. Another time, we were coming out of Hong Kong, and a destroyer was running ahead of us and decided to go from the port side to the starboard side of us, and he didn't realize that we were gaining speed all the time and getting up, and he caused a near collision, but he put his pedal to the metal and moved out of the way, and we survived. He survived, and it was all very good. Another time we were going through the South China Sea, and it was in the night, and as far as you could see, there were 1,000 fishing boats out there with lights. Each one had a light, and we were plowing along. We're probably going 10, 15 knots, and it was really scary that we might hit one of those boats, but we had no choice but to keep going straight, and amazingly, we passed through them all and went on to whatever we were doing.
I went into the Army in June of 1943. I was stationed at Fort Riley, Kansas, had basic training there. And then after that, I went into the Army Specialized Training Program and was sent to the University of Nebraska. That lasted, there were 3,000 co-eds there, so you can imagine we enjoyed that very much. That program ceased, and I was sent to the 66th Infantry Division, and we went to Camp Rucker, Alabama, where we did training for overseas duty and combat. We went from that point to by convoy to England, and we were stationed at Camp Piddlehinton, which is located about 35 miles from London. We were very busy there, and on Christmas Eve of 1944, we were alerted to load up and get ready to go in convoy across the English Channel. That night in the English Channel, one of our ships was torpedoed, and on that ship were about 2,200 riflemen from one regiment of our division. We lost most of those troops, and this was never really mentioned in the press or anywhere because they didn't want to divulge that at that time. We landed in Cherbourg and were headed, we found out later, into the Battle of the Bulge. Since our division was so under strength, they stopped us and sent us into pocket warfare. Our duty there was to retain the troops that had been trapped in pockets like Saint-Nazaire and Lorient, which were big submarine camps. Our duty was to keep those troops trapped in there while we were brought up to strength and ready to go into combat. We were not brought up to strength very fast because all of the replacements who were going over there were going into the Battle of the Bulge. We did get up to some strength, and fortunately, I was not involved actually in the Battle of the Bulge. We went into Germany as fast as we could and ended up in Koblenz, Germany. Again, one of the outstanding things that happened to us there was that our platoon had guard duty of Kaiser Wilhelm's $1 million sparkling Burgundy wine cellar. You can imagine what went on there while we were guarding that. I think that pretty well gets it up to that point. And in Koblenz, we were right near the Russian troops and were not left there very long. They wanted to let Russia take over Koblenz, and so we came back in 40 and 8 boxcars back to France. I didn't mention that obviously I went into the service as a buck private. When I came out, I was a staff sergeant. The event that meant the most to me or made the biggest impression was the actual torpedoing of that ship. I was on an LST because I was in the heavy weapons and had 81 millimeter mortars, and we had to transport those in jeeps with a trailer, and we would have the ammunition in the trailer. That's why we were on LSTs, and that's probably why I wasn't on that particular ship. Other events that were very important or came out in my mind, I had leave to London. I went in the shower there at Marble Arch, and I heard this fella talking. I turned around and looked across the room, and it happened to be Frank Epps, who also was from Greenville, and probably one of the best friends I ever had at that time. He is actually the only person I saw while I was over there that I knew before going into the service, and we really enjoyed being with each other. Other than that, I would say in the pocket warfare, we were exposed to Lorient, which was a submarine depot, and they had several hundred submarines there, the Germans did. This obviously is where the submarine came from that torpedoed the ship in our division. So it meant a great deal to us to be able to contain those people in there until we were moved away. That is